Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Prez, and this is episode 320. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Prez, that is at _Presidente on Twitter. Prez, how are you doing on this right now? Nice Thursday evening.
Not so nice in DC. It's kind of gloomy and gray and shit. So, that's lame. But aside from that, I'm doing all right.
That might just be because Trump's in town, though.
That might just be for that reason. Someone, I think Stacy actually in our Strickcord was like, "How are the vibes in DC?" And I was like, "I've literally left my
Great,
house
since
to walk
Bradley
my
Beal got
dog."
traded.
Since what?
Since Bradley Beal got traded, fucking great.
Between Brad Beal getting traded and
Trump getting indicted.
Trump getting locked up. All we need is the Mystics players to get healthy. That's all we need.
And we need John Wall to resign.
He's going to play in Italy, I heard.
Apparently, he denied that though. He came out
really?
on Twitter and I think he did one of those like get better sources or like who are your sources things. But we're not going to talk about that. We are going to talk about other things. But before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at @strick.land. On Instagram, you can follow us on there. We're posting all kinds of new content. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you haven't done so already, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website, which is at thestrick.land. We have all kinds of stuff on there. Hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Again, you can find that on our website. And then finally, the Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday alongside Prez. You also get access to the Strickland Mailbag, hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, a.k.a. the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas Amico, that comes out every other week. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you, and none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and match reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games, available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. I was actually like, this is not even like related to the current Knicks or anything. The Knicks signed some fucking dudes on Exhibit 10 contracts. If you want to talk about somebody named Obadiah Noel, which is amazing, and I don't know, they signed somebody else. We're not going to do that. So if that's your thing, I apologize. But I was listening to the Knicks Film School pod, and they did like a ranking of it. They had like the whole system set up, but it was basically a ranking the best wins, the Knicks wins of the 21st century to date. And I was interested because the first two games off the board were the Carmelo Anthony 62-point game. I think John picked him, and the Carmelo Anthony Easter game, the double
overtime.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Jeremy picked that one, and Andrew was like, in dismay, aghast that they had picked his two favorite games ahead of him. I don't remember what Andrew picked third, but I was interested by this because they had a whole system set up. It was something like, and apologies if I'm fucking this up, but it was like, they had seven. They all got 7 picks, and 3 of them had to be Knicks playoff games, of which there are not that many in this century, unfortunately. So 3 had to be Knicks playoff games, 2 had to be from a season they made the playoffs, and then 2 had to be from a season they didn't make the playoffs. And why I thought this was interesting. Well, I thought it was interesting that those were the first 2 games to come off the board. And very specifically, I should note, the 62-point game was in a season the Knicks did not make the playoffs. And the double Easter game, or the double overtime Easter game, Carmelo scores 43 against the Bulls. That was a season the Knicks did make the playoffs, but they only won 1 game in those playoffs. What I thought was so interesting about this is that they talked about a whole variety of things throughout the pod, but I was like very, very, it like made me think about my own fandom, because I was thinking, like, when they were announcing the rubric, right, of like, oh, 3 of these and 2 of these and 2 of these, I was like thinking in my head, like, all right, what would I pick? What would be my picks? And I was so struck that like the Melo 62-point game was one that all resonated with them, not because it doesn't resonate with me. Like, it's a great individual performance for sure. But it was funny to me because I was like, in my head, I'm thinking like, for a season where the Knicks didn't make the playoffs, like probably like the game where they fucking beat Kristaps in the Garden. And I'm just thinking about like these crazy, like more like not individual performance type of games. And I was just interested by that because I'm like, okay, like it's always interesting when you kind of realize that how you consume something and how you view something and the things that you value or that you enjoy more, is so different and can be so different from people who ultimately like love the Knicks and care about the Knicks just as much as you. I mean, we see this all the time in other things, right? Like fucking Star Wars or Marvel movies.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
Right. But I was just so struck at the difference of like the Carmelo angle of it all, because like, look, I get it. Carmelo is a great player, and I don't love him like the way other Knicks fans love him, but I do appreciate elements of what Carmelo did in New York. But I was just so struck by that, like that it's just like it's so different for so many people, and like, look, the conversation goes on. They all pick different things. And they weigh different things. Some people liked this playoff game more than that playoff game versus this regular season game. But I was just so struck by like how we can all consume this thing that is ultimately like Knicks basketball, but like value, not even value is the wrong word, but the things that like resonate.
The things that
us,
resonate. Yeah, that's the word I was going to choose. It's a fascinating topic. I didn't check that pod. And I surprised Prez doesn't listen to any pods.
Don't be offended if anybody from KFS is listening to this, because Prez doesn't listen to any of our pods either.
I learned what Stacy and Shwin talk about through the internet, just like the rest of you, okay, who don't have Patreon or whatever.
You don't need Patreon to listen to me and Stacy talk.
Look, you get the point, all right, motherfucker. So no, it's true, and I think there's a lot of things that go into what make a game resonate with you. PD Webb, who has been doing his thing with amateur scouting for some time now, so he's kind of retired from the basketball podcast circuits, but if you go back in the archives, he's jumped on our pod a couple of times to talk draft stuff. He had a pod back in the day, I think it was called like The Joy of Basketball or something, and it was kind of about this topic. He basically would have guests on for short, like 20-minute combos about like a player they love and a performance they loved by that player. And it's just really interesting to hear different people go over what resonated with them about a player in a game. And like with Carmelo, like,
and even which players, right? Like,
like Carmelo, it's super interesting because like our perspective for fandom was in such a different place at the time, because the bar for what brings us joy as fans was so low, right? Like a asking a Knicks fan about like playoff success back then was like asking somebody how many grains of sand are on the beach, right? It's just like, yeah, I intellectually know what you're asking me, but like I can't emotionally hypothesize about that because it's unfucking familiar. So for a lot of people, like those individual performances were really all we had. But if you had, what makes it fascinating is like some folks like you or Macri, for example, you have.
Macri picked the Carmelo 62-point game, but I suspect that John may have been, let's say, pandering to the masses rather than picking from his own heart.
Yeah, I mean, I know Macri has gone on the record many times about his favorite games from the 90s and all that. And that's what I'm saying. Like you and Macri and me and others have experienced those things. So it's, for some people, like that expectation can be reset, right? So to speak. Whereas for you, you're like, no, like it's been a while, but I still remember, right? The North remembers. And then you have fucking weirdos like me. Like, you know what one of my games probably would have been? Jamal Crawford's 54-point game where he made 16 shots in a row versus D Wade in the Miami
That game
Heat.
was awesome.
It was incredible. And people are often surprised when I tell them Jamal Crawford is one of my favorite Knicks because they're like, wasn't he bad at basketball? And I'm like, first of all, maybe. Second of all,
probably. Yeah, he probably wasn't great.
It's a more complicated answer than people think because it was a different time. It wasn't
all you
just
got to know
TS
is Prez's rubric is often like it's basically just would I go to Rucker and watch him play on a Friday night? Yes.
Listen. If I was at that Jamal Crawford game, I would have fucking passed out and had to be like airlifted to a fucking hospital from just like
no, you would have
the
just
heart attack shock. I would have just ascended to the afterlife.
Like peak life. Yeah, it's just peak life for you.
That shit was for you kids out there. Go watch the grainy YouTube footage. This man made 16 shots in a row of the ultimate pure hooper variety against prime Dwayne Wade. So like,
I just want to let you know, like, I don't think like I know the footage may not be 1080p. I'm not sure like 2006 2007 YouTube footage is grainy, Prez. Not certain about that one.
It's pretty bad compared to what we got now. So I'd be watching those fucking like the other day. I don't know why. I was talking to my brother and we were sending out links of shit. And first we're looking at T-Mac highlights, like prime T-Mac. No, maybe not prime T-Mac, but Houston T-Mac, and then looking at the Lakers Celtics Kobe finals, and I was like, damn, we were watching this fucking garbage quality on like 50-inch TVs that weighed like 500 pounds and shit. Like, what a different fucking time to consume the basketball that almost matches the style of play where all of those games were like 75 to 81 or whatever. Anyway, I digress, but yeah, it's what resonates is really interesting. I have no idea what I would pick from like more recent times, to be honest. Outside of playoff games, I still feel like last season I'm kind of like it's going to sound funny because obviously I'd spend more time thinking and talking and writing and tweeting about the Knicks than 99.9% of people, but like sometimes it feels like it hasn't fully registered. Like, oh yeah, we had that season and Jalen Brunson did that. Like, I like, me, like my memory kind of sucks for this sort of stuff, especially in the immediate aftermath. Like if we're podcasting in December and you ask me about a game in November, I'm like, what was let me go look at the box score.
We played basketball in November.
I know. It's not great.
The season started.
It's definitely the hole in my weakness here as a basketball podcaster. I can't seem to remember much basketball, but like I don't know, man. Like just picking my favorites of this past year or
yeah. Three, I was like, thinking about it. It was just funny to me because like I was immediately thinking of like the best victories. Like, and I'm not again. This is I guess the best way to put it is like. Everybody can look. We all picked wins, right? It's not like they were out there picking like, "Oh, I love this game where the Knicks had a heartbreaking loss." Like
when everybody fucking picks out like the game where Steph Curry became Steph Curry, which is when they lost to the Knicks, even though he scored a bunch because Raymond Felton blocked the game-winning shot.
It's like the one good defensive play he made in that game. But like
no, we're not slandering Ray Felton here, all right? That was a great game, great play from Nick legend Ray Felton.
All right, never call him that again. he's like a legend at fucking McDonald's or something.
He's a legend in Prez's heart.
Because he was like the first point guard with a reasonable handle we had since Marbury.
Yeah, he was the sauciest point guard we had since Marbury. We had what was my this is a dark ages deep cut here.
Lujan?
My guy Spanish Chocolate. Sergio Rodriguez.
Sergio Rodriguez, yeah.
He was saucy. He was not good at basketball, but he was saucy.
He was terrible, actually. But
he wasn't even good by like Spain standards.
No, he was like really, really bad. But I was like, my immediate thoughts were always to like, oh, well, what was this like awesome random team win or like I felt hope or something, only to later have it crushed, obviously. But it was a funny thing because I'm like, really like my first thought was like, oh yeah, when we fucking beat Dallas at the Garden, like right after trading Kristaps, that shit was great.
That was good.
Marcus Morris game winner. Everybody's going.
Frank almost dunked on him.
Frank didn't know. Frank. Oh, that was the game.
That was a different game.
Yeah, that was the game.
This is what I'm talking about. I can't fucking remember this shit.
He was wearing a white jersey. That was the game at Dallas in New York. Yeah, like it was like a totally random game, and it was. I mean, not random in the sense of like obviously a very specific game, but random what occurred. Like we got like really good Dennis Smith Jr. minutes. You know, like just random shit like that. I think that was like one of the few games early in Julius's time in New York where he got his game off. So it's just like one of those things, and like that, it's just funny. That's what was funny to me though, is like when they were describing what would be your like ding. I was like thinking of these like random team events, and honestly they were both probably right in picking like those games because they are more memorable games, I think, to the vast majority of people. But it just struck me because I'm like, wow, like I'm such a fucking weirdo. Like the things that like resonate with me are like, I'm like, oh man, when Frank dropped 20 and 10 against the fucking the Wizards, that was
the COVID game that I had tickets to, and that's when I decided after getting fried chicken with my friends a block from the arena that, you know what, this might be serious fucking business. I'm going home. And I missed Frank scored 20 points, man.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the one. No, I mean, like, there's a lot, man. I was thinking because they did the entire 21st century, and I'm like, damn, like, there were some like crazy games in the 2000s. The Knicks sucked ass, but like there was like,
David Lee overtime tipping.
Yeah. Yep. That
Eddie Curry corner 3 game winner.
No, that would send it to overtime. Relax.
Oh, my bad.
We still won the game though, but yeah, like there was that. There was like the Jamal Crawford lets it go for 3.
Yeah.
Against Denver. Like there's all these like crazy games. And man, there was like this game they played against the Pistons, but like I think it was like a triple overtime game.
Yeah.
Channing
I remember
Frye
that.
made this like, I think he made a 3 then. And like you gotta understand, like Channing Frye making a 3 at that point was not like what Channing Frye became, where it was just like very normal for him to take 3s. Like he didn't take 3s then. He took 20-footers because all bigs, they were not allowed to take 3s, but they could take like 18 to 20-footers. That was just how we did it back then. Kevin Garnett never took a 3, only 18 to 20-footers all day. But like he made a 3 to send it into like whatever it was, overtime or double overtime, whatever. But it was like a crazy game. I got to find that box score. I'll find that box score and post it because it's like a fucking insane box score. There's like, I think Jamal Crawford had like 30 and 7 and 8 or some shit like that. Chauncey Billups went off in that game. It was but it was just one of those things where there's so many of these games. I mean, I think there was a game after we traded for Carmelo, we played Miami and we beat them down in Miami. And it was like, I think Billups hit a big 3 late in that game for us. There's like, when you think about how much time there is, it's like, there's so many fucking games, and even a shitty team will have like these
memorable moments. Right.
Right. And I was struck by that. And it was like ironic because I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, there's a lot more competition for like the best win in a non-playoff season more than anything else in here. I
mean, when you've been in the fucking trenches that long, you got a large. That's what I'm saying. This, like, we've only been like nice for like one season. I know we had 2021, but that was different. Like, so to me, all this,
we're not even like quite like we're like nice. We're nice,
relatively speaking. Yeah. We're like, nobody's gonna be like, oh, the historically great 2022 Knicks. But it's the first time we've had a player who I'm like, oh, like they could just like roast anybody in the fucking league at any given time, and it's not like wow, like fucking J.R. Smith scored 40. Where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah, I mean,
J.R. Smith baseline game winner versus Charlotte. There's another one. I just got out of fucking
he had one against the
flunking not flunking, but I didn't do great on that law school final. But I remember I was like in the hallway and I was like, I totally fucked that test up. Let me see what this Knicks game is about. And it was like 2 minutes left, and J.R. Smith made me feel all better.
Yeah, he had like back-to-back game winners. He had one against them,
Yep.
he had one against Phoenix. That season in general had a lot of those. I mean, there was that one game the year before that where like Melo, JR, and Novak, I think they hit like 21 threes, or they hit some absurd amount of threes combined. That's, by the way, I think that's Carmelo's only career triple-double that game. But it's just like, yeah, there's so many of these random games and awesome games. Like,
you know what else is tied to, I think? Just now that I think about it, a lot of it is like, having, well, like we talk about like the team wins, which are like emotional attachment to the team. But there's also like a lot of these players we're talking about, it's not like they necessarily had to be Knicks for like 5, 6, 7 years. But, you look at like Jeremy Lin, Steve Novak, like,
well, yeah, I was gonna say like Macri picked Lin for a game, and like, I'll just be honest, like the Lin Sanity thing for me, it was awesome in the moment, like no doubt about it. But like, it's never like I never go back and watch Lin Sanity highlights ever. Like, it just doesn't do anything for me as a fan.
It's like one of those cool albums for me. It's like one of those awesome albums that I'm like, this doesn't have a lot of replay value, but it was fucking special for me as a depressed 18-year-old, and I needed that shit.
It was good that
not
one
taken
summer.
away from that, right? But sometimes that's what I'm saying. Like, like time can correlate with building an emotional connection with a player, but other things can correlate with that as well. And in the case of Jeremy Lin, it wasn't time, but like what was happening and just how cool and novel the situation was, right? Like, for a team that didn't have much luck at the time or surprises
or since.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, that's what I'm saying. Jamal Crawford, like, why does he have an emotional attachment to the Jamal Crawford? Surprise, because of his fucking handle. It's my favorite thing, obviously. Like, Steve Novak, nobody's gonna fucking put Steve Novak like in their like top 50 Knicks of all time, but like just the fact that we had a fucking guy who was white and kind of doofy and had the audacity to not only bomb away but like talk shit was fucking endearing as fuck. That was incredible. And the fact that there were other guys on that team who were similarly like endearing for different, it was like a fucking sitcom, basically. Like, it was crazy. So, I didn't even think of Steve Novak games in terms of this exercise, but like, he definitely contributed to, like you said, that kind of connection to that team. And that's probably what I'm waiting for this team is like, they were fucking awesome, but like, I'm still building the connections to this team because a lot of the guys are newish, right? Like, Mitch is the longest tenured Knick.
I don't know. I mean, these guys have been here now for a minute, right? Like, Quick's been here for 4 years. RJ's been here 4. Randall's been here 4. Grimes, I guess, kind of new. Is like 2 years, but still.
Quick and Mitch are the ones like. It's kind of hard to build an emotional connection with the center just because the position is just kind of fucking boring, unless they're a franchise center. You know what I mean? It's just nobody's gonna be like, that walks out.
You don't throw on Mitch like, like Mitch rotation highlights right here. Let's do
it. Like to your initial point though about like the team wins, centers who are not stars, they shine when it matters more than in a fucking 82 game grind, which is why like we might not remember some random like, oh, Mitch dominated Isaiah Stewart in fucking February versus the Pistons, but we're like, oh yeah, remember that time that the Cavs had a fucking rising savior and an all-star in Jared Allen and Mitchell Robinson adopted them both as children? Like, hell, fucking yeah. So, and then quickly obviously, as I would venture to say the player that, at least at the Strickland, most of us have the strongest emotional attachment to on the entire team. And part of that is time. And then part of that is play style, right? Like the carefree style he had that he no longer really has, right? Like he's a completely different
He's
player now.
he's been morphed into a Tibbs bot.
You're right. He's like this weird fusion of like early IQ and also like Kyle Lowry now. So like I don't, yeah, it's different, but like we've seen him evolve, and that kind of stuff uh also builds connection. And unfortunately, you know what else builds connection? When when you see players go through some shit and they make it out the other side. Like
Yeah.
we were all kind of rooting for Frank to make it out the other side, but he really didn't. He's
Let's
unsigned right now.
calm down.
All right, he's still got time, but he might show up next to Kemba. That's all I'm saying. In fucking south of France,
it'll be 2035, and I'll be like, look, I don't know. I'm just saying his form, his mechanics are really popping right now.
Frank might be the one player who I'm retiring my shot mechanics analysis for, just because it's going in the rafters. Because I've dedicated so much time to that. But no, and then you look at quickly and like we had to deal with Elf and all the fucking nonsense, right? And like even though he's not starting now, like he closed the majority of the games for the last year. He was clearly like probably the third best player, at least, and he's probably going to get paid sometime soon. And he still hasn't quite gotten the everything that we feel he deserves, but he's definitely not in like the shit anymore. Like he averaged 29 a game. You know, I know some people are like, well, he didn't get the trust in the playoffs versus Miami before he got hurt. And that's fair. That's totally fair. But like we've seen him at least come out of the tunnel, right? He can still shine a little more, but
I mean, he's improved every year, right? That's basically what you're getting at.
Yeah, he was legitimately, he would have won 6th man of the year if the fucking number one candidate was from anywhere other than fucking Boston, right? So like he got shine and appreciation from people outside of us. That's really what we were talking about. It's like, we know he's nice. Why don't y'all believe us?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and now everybody else was like, oh shit.
Yeah. I really
kind of nice.
Yeah. The trade deadline was fun. It was like, oh, you know who I think we could steal from?
Oh yeah.
Oh, we could, you know, they'll give us 2 firsts for Alex Caruso, and I think we can get quickly too. I'm just like, what are
that
you?
Was like your favorite
crack?
genre of like clips to send around. It's like fake trade proposals where it's like, well, what if the Knicks get, you know, we'll dump like I don't know, some like mid-level star or something, and then you know maybe we stretch them out for 2 firsts a swap, and they could also throw in quickly.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, like I don't think they realize it. Like he's good. Like I'm like I'm pretty sure they know now. I don't think like you're.
These were disrespectful first fantasy basketball trades. This is the trade you set when you're trying to set unreasonable expectations before you come to earth with your real offer.
This is like your Danny Ainge offer.
Yeah, just in case they hit yes, because we all been on the sending side of those trades in fantasy sports where you're like, oh shit, this dumbass fucking accepted it, and everybody else in the league is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. It just got me thinking, and I figured it would be worth bringing up. But that is not what we are convened here for. I guess we could call this like a hater's ball. This is kind of a hater's ball. It is a hater's ball, right? We did a few weeks ago. We leaned into our vast and very, very kind hearts, and we talked about teams and the players and the coaches that we are higher on than consensus. And it is only right to now reach into the darkness in our hearts, all the hate, all the slander, and talk a little bit, maybe a lot bit, about the players, teams, and coaches that we are lower on than consensus. You filled out your little, you know, the players and the teams and the coaches before me. I gotta say, when we did this, I actually had a really hard time doing it with coaches and teams because I actually feel like
same.
It's actually, I think it's
there's really, not that many weak links right now,
and I just feel like there might be a team that people are like, oh, like for example, there are people that I think like the Hawks, right? And it like, could I say like I'm lower on them than consensus. Maybe, but like I'm like, is the consensus really that high on them? Like I feel like it's pretty like okay, like it's pretty
Yeah.
normal. Yeah, I saw it was that's the part I had the toughest time with. But you know, as a true hater, I was still able to come up with some candidates. But we're gonna start with the players. It's more fun to slander players to start with. So Prez, why don't you lead us off here with your first candidate, who I agree with.